And I think, man, if I have a hard time imagining what it would be without my faith, how on earth can a lot of other people get through without it when they're facing challenges I can't even begin to imagine?
Yeah.
So I hope we can provide that. That's what we're here for. We just have to figure out how to help them understand it's there and available for them, and help them realize amidst this culture that's what they want.
Yeah. Well, Susie Kirkpatrick, let's have a chat. I'm really intrigued by this whole conversation that we're going to have, because you bring a perspective on church life that I think a lot of people haven't had and would love to hear about, especially church leaders, because one of the questions that church leaders have a lot of times is they just feel misunderstood, especially by their leadership team, the board of elders or the board of directors of the churches that they lead. And so I think we'll bring a perspective that I think will be helpful to them. So welcome. I'm really glad you're here today.
Thanks.
Susie Kirkpatrick has been a board member at Longview Community Church for quite a while, and we'll talk about that. And she's just about ready to step down. So I thought this would be a great opportunity for us to get a perspective of somebody who's served a church in a leadership role for a long time and has walked with the church through a major transition. And so we can get there soon. But first of all, let's talk a little bit about you, which I know you love to do.
Oh, yes. Let's keep it short.
Yeah, really. Tell us a little bit about your background and then your relationship with the church, Longview Community Church.
Well, I was born in Longview. My dad was the manager of Sears Roebuck, and I was 2 when, as the story goes, Dr. Robert Warren, who was the pastor at Longview Community Church at that time, walked by our window on Christmas Eve and saw my dad putting together toys for Santa to deliver the next morning, and knocked on the door, and we became members of Longview Community Church from that encounter.
That's crazy.
He was a neighbor, and here I am 60 plus years later. So, yeah.
What was like life in the church back then? What did you see when you were part of the church back then?
Well, I was a kid. I went to Sunday school. I went to Vacation Bible School. I went to youth group some. I didn't love youth group. I don't really, it was just, that was all it was to me. It was where I went on Sundays. It was later where I sang, and music has always been a big part of my life at the church. Music has probably kept me in the church over times in my life where I wasn't as active, like through college.
Yeah.
So I did not attend church during college. But I was always in churches because of the fact that I sang. And our concerts were in churches and our tours were in churches. So I was always around a church.
Yeah.
But I came back to town and I was a teacher and then later an elementary school principal. And I attended some, but I wasn't, I would sing. If I was invited to sing or there was something going on musically, I was always there for that. But until I got tapped to be the children's choir director by the pastor at the time, and that was not a match. That's not my happiest memory of my contribution to the church. It was too different from teaching. I was used to an organization and structure and kids doing what you said, and it was a little different on Wednesday night when it came to choir practice. So really, it wasn't until a little bit later I was tapped for some leadership opportunities, and by Harlan Gilliland at the time, and then later again with John Williams, and it was board service. And I think I've had 3 terms on the board and multiple other lesser assignments, but Yeah, that's...
Why did you say yes to being a board member?
Well, isn't it interesting? People will ask for volunteers for things, and you never get volunteers. But when the pastor comes up to you and says they really need you, and here's what you could provide, and so on and so forth, it takes on a different meaning. And I think I was looking for a place to connect, and it was music, and it was leadership. That kind of I don't know, the kind of the business of leadership was something that was comfortable to me. The more of the management kinds of things, not necessarily as much the spiritual things, but at the time we were a very corporate-like board, owing to the fact that we came from R.A. Long's origins, and his board at his Longview Community Church was organized very much like a corporate board.
Yeah.
And
how much did you know about that? Or did you know the history?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I grew up here, and I have been very aware of the history of the town. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's an iconic location. Like it or not. Yeah. I mean, it's got its upsides and downsides. Yeah. But there's nothing like it in town. It's a very unique environment, a very unique history. And it's pretty remarkable. It's interesting that you say that you responded to the pastor asking. This is a message for you pastors. Because I think a lot of times pastors sit back and they think, why is nobody volunteering? Why is nobody stepping up? We have all these people who have so much to give and nobody wants to do anything. And yeah. And I think a lot of times it really comes down to like what happened with your dad. The pastor coming up and knocking on the store window and saying, I would love for you to be part of our congregation. And I think pastors miss that opportunity a lot for whatever reason, because there's so much in an invitation to come and be part. I mean, that's really what Jesus did. Come follow me. Mm-hmm. He didn't hesitate to bring these guys in and women into what he was doing, and he wasn't waiting around for them to get it.
Yeah. But like the disciples, I think we often say to ourselves, why me?
Yeah. Yeah.
What would I have to offer? Especially, I think there were the roles of pastors and congregants were very divided at the time, and how the minister, the pastor did these things, and that was just their job. Yeah. And so to put yourself as part of that culture sort of seemed a little bit audacious. Yeah.
So how long have you been a board member there?
Well, this time I'm coming to the end of, I think, 5 years. But I've done it twice before. Yeah. So
talk a little bit about that, the journey as a leader of the board or as a board member there. How has it changed over the years? What changes have you seen?
Well, I mentioned before we were a corporate model board, and for good reason. That was the background of the leaders of the church. That was what was familiar to them and what worked. And I remember the change when we were experiencing the fact that John Williams was going to retire, and we were going to have to go find a new pastor.
And you were part of the search committee.
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
So this is really kind of the end of 9 years for me, this stint, including the pastor search, which was 2.5 years long.
Wow.
We ran into troubles finding people who were interested in going to work for a 25 member board of directors.
I wonder why.
So we recognized after a first run through that we probably had some work to do before we were ready to go out and get that pastor again. And what we did was reorganize our corporate-like board into more of an elder board model. And it was fewer people. And I think candidates were looking for a board that would be a little more nimble than a large board would be, and they would be able to respond to cultural changes and so forth a little faster than that would allow for. And so that's what we did. And then we went out for a second round, and we were more successful that time.
Did you get a lot of pushback? I mean, were there a lot of people that didn't want that number on the board to change, or were they ready for it?
In our congregation, I don't think we didn't have a lot of pushback that I remember at that time. The people that were involved in the decision making were well trusted people, and that was all okay. Where we began to feel a difference, I think, is when you have 25 people talking about the things that are going on the board. You have all those people out in your congregation and amongst your members that are talking about what's going on.
Right.
And then you reduce that to 8, and you have fewer of those conversations going on, so fewer people feel like they have a sense of what you're doing. And that, especially when change is involved, feels uncomfortable to people, I think.
So you were part of the board when it was 25 members, and you were also part of the board when it was 8 members.
Yeah.
Did that change? Did your role change when? I understand what you're saying as far as the way it's perceived in the congregation, and then the dynamic of the whole thing in the congregation. But how did you feel an additional weight when it went down to 8?
Yes. I feel like my voice was more important, doesn't it? It carried more
I understand.
weight
Yeah.
because there were just fewer of us.
Yeah.
So it did. So I felt more responsible to it, although I had been the president of the board twice with the large board also. And I spent a lot of time trying to understand the structure and the committees and make sure that everything was operating by the rules that were in place at that time.
Yeah.
And that those rules relaxed when we weren't so tied to a kind of a corporate structure.
That's a pretty big transition to happen in a church. How many members did the church have back then when it was 25 members?
Boy, I don't think I could tell you.
No, I don't even know.
I don't really know.
I just wondered how.
I would say more than now.
Yeah.
It was bigger.
It's a tough transition because, for one, nobody likes being told what to do. Like a congregation doesn't like being told by a pastor who's considering coming there that this is too big, this is too unmanageable, and you know, I would imagine that was a difficult thing to come to grips with. You know, if we're really going to get somebody that we want here that's really high quality, we're going to have to change.
Well, and really, that came from the pastor search committee.
Yeah.
But we knew going out that we were going to have to make some changes. We knew we were actively seeking a pastor who was going to bring change. And we knew that that was going to be uncomfortable at times. And it was.
And it was. And it is.
Yeah.
Change is always uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, and you think about it, too. We've got a historic church, and there are multiple people in it, like myself, who are at least second generation in it. They've been there for decades themselves. So those kind of people aren't people that are hungry for change, or they wouldn't have been there all that long. So then when faced with it in something that has been important to them as part of their life and their faith life, that can be scary, and I get that.
Yeah. And I think, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but it seems like there'd be a grieving process too.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
People grieve differently.
Yeah.
Some people, it's really an important process for them. Other people push it away, and then it crops up later in the middle of a gathering of some kind, and they're like, I don't necessarily like all this change.
Well, and I even read a book that was so indicative of kind of the undertone was, and I can't remember the exact title, but it was something like, "Who stole my church?" or "You took my church." You know, that kind of a sentiment. It's, wait a minute, this is slipping away from me. This is the church I've known forever. Wait, stop. But you just find out that some people loved parts of the church that were important to them, but maybe we're going to see some change, and they might make a choice to go someplace else because it fits their needs better. And that really hurts at first, but on both sides. But it's okay. People just need to find what works for them, find a place that is right for them.
Did you find yourself in those conversations a lot with people? Because you'd been part of leadership for so long, I imagine people turned to you and said, Susie, what's going on?
I would say I felt that. I don't know if that was the case, but I certainly felt that responsibility. And these are people that I've known and loved and respected for a long period of time. So I certainly felt responsible to caring for their feelings, representing their thoughts when I thought they were valid and should be listened to. So we had a unique situation in that our whole church leadership changed all at once. And it was just...
What do you mean?
A perfect storm. We had our senior pastor retire. We had our associate pastor have an opportunity to move closer to family. We had our children's minister retire. We had our custodian retire. It was just chance, but they all left at the same time. So we had all new staff.
Ouch.
All new staff, new governance, a lead pastor who was brought in for change. And these people did not have the historical picture that some of the older staff would have had. And there was no continuity of that.
Yeah.
So that was a big change. And then enter COVID and throw a little more at it. So it was big.
So how do you think you got through it? Unscathed.
Prayer. Well, I don't think you're ever unscathed.
No, I don't either.
Really. But, we're still learning. We're still adjusting. We're still adapting to one another. Some people have gone, and that makes me sad, but you have to be okay. The important thing is, did they find someplace for themselves? And are we still providing a place for people to call their spiritual home? And
as you reflect back on the years that you've been a leader in the church, what do you think the primary role of the board is? What is it that you're charged with that you feel? I mean, I know there's some things written in the bylaws and there are some descriptions of those roles, but as somebody who's been there for a long time, what do you think your role is?
Boy, well, it's felt like trying to figure out what God wants you to do and try to help as a leadership team usher that in successfully, so that you can answer to God that you did what you thought was right, even when it caused some waves. And then to do your best to help people understand each other and have as few waves as possible. Yeah.
And through the whole process, you've had new board members come on, and they look to you and say, "So, what is it we're supposed to do? How does this work, Susie? How are we supposed to function here?" And so you're indoctrinating people all the time as well.
Yeah. I just feel like the staff is charged with carrying this stuff out, but we need to help them understand the historic perspective so that they can do it better.
Yeah.
And try to interface where there are misunderstandings and of course, communication is huge. That's one thing we learned from a smaller board, and I kind of referenced it earlier. You have fewer people doing the communication, so those of you who are left better get really good at it, and that's been a process.
Yeah, really clear. You can't really lean too heavily on anyone else, really. Well, churches are an interesting organization, or I should say organism, as well, because like no church thinks that they're doing things wrong. No church thinks that they're weak. Every church thinks that God has led them down the path that they're on, and they've been faithful for the most part to do what He's commissioned them to do, and you go through different leadership forms. But like when you've been there long enough, you realize, we're not like messing up completely. And there's some things that are worth holding on to. The traditions are worth holding on to. And that's coming from somebody who planted a church 32 or 35 years ago and pastored it for 32 years. And it's tough to let go of stuff.
Yeah.
Because you don't serve in the church thinking that you're doing it the wrong way ever. You think that you're listening to God's voice and following in his lead. And it's pretty exciting, I think, but it's not easy and it's not clean and neat. There's no tidiness in church life.
And it involves people.
Yeah.
And that's precious commodity.
Yeah. As you reflect over the time that you've been a leader, now you're stepping down from that position, how do you feel about it? How do you feel about where you're heading?
Well, it's kind of an odd feeling for me because I've been doing this for a long time. It comes at kind of a good time because my family has moved back to town. I have grandkids in town now, and both my children are back. So I get to kind of explore what that realm is going to be like on a different level, and I'm excited about that. But I have to find my next place.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure yet what that is. I think it'll be good to take a break, and I think it'll be good for somebody else to step up and step in because it's a great place to learn. It's been a fabulous thing for my own faith journey.
Yeah.
It's just serving with people that are trying so hard to do what God wants them to do. And I just appreciate the opportunity to watch them making decisions with that perspective.
Yeah.
You don't get that in too many other boards that you serve on. And
Yeah. I know this is probably a difficult thing to do, but what's Longview Community Church like? What's the church culture there like today?
Oh boy, that is different. And you could probably get 5 different
Yeah.
answers from 5 different people. But, well, I would say we hope we are welcoming. We hope we are the proper phrase would be, we hope we are providing opportunities for people to experience the presence of God.
Yeah.
And we hope we are going to provide things that are going to cause people to see that they need this in their life, because so many people have drifted or never were to begin with.
Yeah.
Generations of people that are growing up that don't even know the stories, don't know who Jesus is or what he offers. Total shift. So what are we like? I don't know. I hope it's a place where we are friendly. People feel that when they walk in the door.
Yeah.
We're told that is the case. But everybody's got a different experience.
You sound like a leader who's been there for some time.
Do I?
Because you use the word hope. And young people tend to be very black and white about things. And this is the way we are. And we're not like this, but we're more like this. And when you've spent as much time as you have in the church, and I feel the same way, I feel like I'm a lot more reluctant to define things really tightly. I mean, it's a room full of people from all kinds of backgrounds who all have their ideas of what it means to have a relationship with God and how that works, coming together, and they're really like a family. Mm. And families are messy, always, because there's people involved. But you do have a unique perspective, Susie, and I really appreciate it, because I think you end up being an anchor point for a lot of people in the church. Whether you're leading as a board member or not, they're still going to have, hey, can we take a walk around the lake and talk about some stuff that's going on in life?
Taking mini walks around the lake.
I've seen you on those walks. Yeah, and I think that's a privilege to do that and an honor to do that.
It's a responsibility.
That people would turn to you.
Responsibility.
Yeah. And so I think it's great. Tell me what it's like to help a pastor learn what the culture is like in a church. Because Dave Hendrickson, who's the current pastor, you had to take him through that process of learning who you are and what that congregation's like. Because he had his ideas of what things were going to happen when he came.
For sure. And that continues to evolve.
Yeah.
I sat in a meeting with him the other morning, and he gave a picture of what he sensed a particular framework was, or this is the way community church was, or I can't exactly remember what the specifics were, but I looked at him like, really? Because I had a totally different perspective.
Yeah.
But the woman sitting next to me said, yeah. And she'd been there too. So, it's kind of tricky. All I can do is give my perspective on how I saw things. And I do think it's that the new pastor's in a tough position because they come in and they read, for us, it's old minutes from meetings and it's communication that they've read, and they get stories from different people. And then they put together a vision of what they sense it was like. It doesn't always match what somebody else experienced or thought. But all you can do is share your perspective and have them put that in the mix. And
we've got a new person coming in too who is hired to take a church through transition. Mm-hmm. So they've got their own ideas how that's supposed to work. Yes. And I think you're invaluable to that person. And I know that Dave feels like that too. He feels like the board members, especially you, have been really, really important to helping him do what he's come to do. And yet still, it's different viewpoints and different expectations, a different hope. Yeah. And I think it's so good that you've been part of that process, especially through the whole search, because the beginning of the search for a new pastor was when the changes started happening. It was even before he got there that things were changing.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And so, I think it's remarkable what you've been able to bless him with.
Well, it's been an amazing experience for me too. I mean, like I said, my faith journey has been improved walking through all of this, and I will miss that part of it. But I suspect he'll find a role for me someplace, so it'll probably turn out okay.
Do you ever get tired of people saying, I know, like I said earlier, I know what community church is like, and I've never been part of that congregation. I've only seen it from the outside. Do you ever want to sit down and go, let me tell you what it's really like?
Well, it always kind of surprises me. I know we had a reputation early on because we came from the leadership of the mill when the town was started and so forth. And you look at the pictures of the people that were in attendance on Sunday morning, and it was all these gentlemen in long overcoats and their hats and their suits and their entire families there. I mean, it must have been 1,000 people on Sunday mornings, but it was kind of like expected that you go. And as the years went on, a lot of people in leadership ended up at Longview Community Church, probably for a variety of reasons. Yeah. And that kind of got us a reputation of sorts. And I think that the reality of that has changed, but the reputation may still be there. Mm-hmm. I don't know that the leadership of the community is still necessarily at Longview Community Church. But I think there is a perception that there is maybe more wealth and quote unquote power than there used to be.
Influence,
yeah.
I had a conversation yesterday with somebody who's been here in town about 10 years, and he's really wanting things to change and wants God to come and wants revival to happen in the church and all this. And he was talking as if nothing was going on. And, I've been at it for a while, 40 years or so, and especially if I've had that same heart, but I tried to encourage him. There's probably more going on than you realize. This is not the same culture in this town that existed 20 years ago. Things have changed dramatically from the way things used to be in Longview, Kelso, where, you had a great paying job at the mill, and that guaranteed your kids having a job at the mill, that guaranteed your grandkids having a job at the mill. There was a lot of things that were in place that made this a really strong foundation for a community that have changed dramatically since then. And the church has had to adjust to all that too. So that the city's different, the church is different, business is different, expectations are different, and no one really knows where this is all going. Yeah. But I think the church can become a real foundation for people to rest on, because the gospel never changes. I mean, that story is the same. And the God we serve, the God we love, the God we want to be in the presence of all the time, or as much as we can, that doesn't change. And so we're in a great position to be an anchor point for the whole city, I think.
Well, I hope so. I mean, for myself personally, I don't know how. I have a good life, and I don't know how you get through even a good life without a faith to rely upon. And there are a lot of people in town who are not as comfortable and as secure and have had as healthy an upbringing as I have had, healthy family situation. And I think, man, if I have a hard time imagining what it would be without my faith, how on earth can a lot of other people get through without it when they're facing challenges I can't even begin to imagine?
Yeah.
So I hope we can provide that. That's what we're here for. We just have to figure out how to help them understand it's there and available for them, and help them realize amidst this culture that's what they want.
Yeah. And the whole idea that God's not doing anything, we need to pray that he starts doing more. Like, says who?
Yeah.
Like, he's alive and well in Longview, Kelso. God is alive and well here, and his Holy Spirit's doing some things all the time that draw us closer to him and closer to each other. And so I'm really hopeful about the community, even in the near future, because there's always an opportunity for us to have more of him and more relationship with each other. And so I'm really glad for Longview Community Church that you've been so faithful to just love the people and love the past, but also not be afraid of change in the future. That's a really, I mean, you should be honored for embracing that the way you have, Susie, because it's a hard thing to do. A lot of people just quit. When change comes, this is not what I'm about. I'm not going to take this organization here. But somebody has to. Right?
Well, yeah, and if not, you know, I'm sure you found yourself in positions where, things need to happen, and it's going to take people to do it, and all of a sudden you look around and you realize, oh, I'm one of the people that's in a position to make that happen. I guess I better step up to the plate.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's surprising to you that you're sort of looking for that leader somewhere else, and you realize, oh, it could be me.
Yeah. And then God steps in and says, oh, by the way, it is you.
It is you. Yeah, and then you realize you have opportunity, and you have some trust with people, and you just need to do the best you can to help out. And I think, I have loved that church. I grew up in that church, and I've loved the people there. I can see the culture changing. I can see the needs being different, and I love it enough that I don't want to see it die. And I know churches are facing that.
Yeah.
And as we say, we have just completed our first 100 years, and I'm in it for the next 100. So we're going to have to make some changes, and we have. And people, many people have stepped out of their comfort zone and given it a chance, and we're moving forward.
Yeah. Today's my wife's birthday, and she hates birthdays. She just does not like all the attention. And so today I'm going to join with the voices of hundreds of other people, Susie, who would say to you, thank you for all that you've done. Thank you for the way that you've hung in there for a group of people who may not even hung in for themselves at times, but you've been there for them. Thank you for being so faithful to serve that congregation. It's a blessing to them, and it's a blessing to the city. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah. And thanks for the interview. This has been a great opportunity to get to know you a little bit better, and a little more of your story, and a little bit more of the story of Longview Community Church. So I really appreciate you.
It was my pleasure.
Yeah.